Welcome to the Grace Hour Show, everyone. This is a Christian podcast. You just caught us in a moment, maybe there. Thanks, Jehu. Put that on the air. We're coming to you live from Greater Grace Church in Baltimore. I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis, one of the pastors here at the church ministry in Baltimore, Fruitful Ministry. We've just gotten through the Easter season, and with me, Pastor Tom Schaller, the pastor of our church, leader of our church here in Baltimore. And we talk about things here on this podcast. We want you to learn about what God is trying to do and say to us. So we are talking about a subject that maybe, you might be confused about: obedience. That's this week we've been talking about discovering God's will on the program, how that happens, what is the will of God for our lives. I think lots of books have been written about it. People want to know. I think they're trying to find the secret formula for the secret sauce that they can put in their life, and their life would be as they would want it to be. But obedience is a big topic, and it came early because in Genesis 2, the Lord commanded the man. So he commanded the man a couple of things: fruitful, multiply, and cultivate the garden that he had been set in. So the man had work to do. He had a relationship with the woman given to him to nurture, and he had a command to be fruitful and produce children that would fill the earth. And that was, the first instruction. And the one prohibition, was that here's a tree over here, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat that tree, you're going to die. It's like just letting you know, don't eat of it and you won't die. But we know the outcome of that, right, Pastor? The outcome was that it was eaten of, and the fact that we are in bodies of death. Our hair grows gray, and you were talking, I think, was it yesterday or the other day at the rap session, you were reading that last chapter of Ecclesiastes and going through all that, like you can't hear singing girls anymore, your joints are bad, your eyes are dim, you have no desire for women anymore. All of that stuff happens because of, simple disobedience to the one command that they were given in the garden. So anyway, thank you, Adam and Eve. Anyway.
Yeah. Obedience in the Garden of Eden, and life would have been a lot different. Our outer man perishes, and we die. Our bodies fall apart because of sin, right?
Yeah.
And so the disobedience brought a curse, and we live in that and see it around us all the time. But then there is that cry in the heart, this groaning for the eternal and for a better world, and that's also in the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you were preaching last night, and you were talking about the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and the nature of the Spirit helping us in what we're doing, so that we hold fast to those, like you talked from this, interesting passage. I think we could go to that passage, the 2 Kings passage, the interesting passage that, after there was this invasion and resettlement, really, this is seems to be a pattern of empires over the course of human history. Like you conquer a people, and then in order to sort of divide them so that they can't organize and become a force of a force that works together, they are resettled to different places. You probably have read more on this than I have. You like war history and everything like that. But from what I understand, there was a plan in the Nazi regime to resettle Hollanders, people from the Netherlands, to someplace in Eastern Europe. Yeah, right. And then
Bring
just sort
Polish
of
people to
yeah, just to get them sort of off balance. And this is what happened with Assyria. They took the 10 tribes that were from that northern kingdom, and they repopulated, they resettled them all up in Central Asia, I think, and all the way down into what was Persia and what's now Iran, obviously. But like when they brought people that were not of Israel to the promised land, then the lions populated, and they didn't know the God of the land. It's like the land is like still a pretty important part of the dynamic of what God wants to do with this world, right?
It's in 2 Kings 17 and 25, and then And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. This is in Deuteronomy. The Lord promised, and it's 7:22, when the people were not obeying God, the lion population increased, and there was a judgment on the people because of that. So now the foreigners have moved into the land, and now they're getting eaten by lions, and they recognize that there's a spiritual reason behind this, and we need to learn about the God of the land. And we said last night that we got to look it up in the manual. Who is the God of the land have to say about this, and so but it said they did not fear God.
Yeah.
But they were willing to accommodate, almost by superstition, how we can be superstitious and we can obey don't walk under a ladder, or something about a black cat and
that kind
the crack in the sidewalk and these kind of things. But a rabbit foot in a basketball game, you can obey those things, but it doesn't mean that you're obeying God.
No. Yeah. I think maybe we think of obedience, it's not enforced, it's an option. It's like in Deuteronomy, you mentioned Deuteronomy there. They disobeyed, and so the lion population, later on, God said, I put before you two ideas, one of life and one of death. If you choose the way of life, then things will be this way. If you choose the way of death, then you open yourself up to the consequences of that, And, just like in the story in Numbers, the people grumbled, they murmured, the snakes were let loose. That's another wild animal, biting people and, poisonous, deadly. And then there's one rule. There's make a serpent of brass, put it on a pole, lift it up. Okay, so here's the instruction. It's up to you to apply that instruction to your life. If you look to the serpent, you're healed. Right? And in the Passover, the culmination of all the plagues, the obedience was not mandated. It wasn't enforced. It wasn't at gunpoint, do this. People who are persecuted throughout the world reject Christ or die, and that's happened to people throughout the ages since Christianity came on the scene. But, there's an option there at the Passover. You could put the blood on your doorposts and go into the room and be saved from death, or you could take your chances, so to speak. And that's really, I think, the thing. When we're talking about obedience, really God has given certain commands, precepts, statutes. These things are ways of living, and he's saying, I made you in your image. You have an ability to reason and rationalize, and it's your choice, right?
Yeah. So what you're saying, I think, is there. the Lord wants to draw us to His
Him.
heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there can be like a mechanical obedience, which would be without heart. Like in the military, you obey your officer, but do you have a heart for it? Not necessarily. You salute him, but in your heart you don't. Not with him. So what the Lord is saying to us, that you're made in my image. I know your heart. I know like what your motivation is, and I want obedience on that level, out of love.
Yeah.
Like I want a relationship, So there's a distinction between those two obediences, you could say. One is obligatory, and it is by law, and okay, you can do it. And that's very good. I mean, we're not decrying that or demeaning it, but we are like more interested, as we see in Jesus's ministry and in his teaching. I want your heart.
Yeah. The manner of the God of the land that these people were trying to placate, like you do with idols. The idea is you're trying to win, like if I pay this measure of obedience to this idol, then I will get what I want. So it's sort of more of a transaction. But you were saying in the message last night and from that passage that the people did not understand the fear of the Lord. They didn't enter into a relationship with him. They didn't have a awesome sense of who he is. That's the way I think when we talk about the fear of the Lord, we're not talking about the fear that brings us tormented, that God's going to strike us down, but what God is trying to initiate, and what he tried to initiate with the first man and the woman is, I'm telling you something, if you just believe me and love me, do this out of love because I love you. I'm telling you about this tree because I love you. And if you just obey me because you love me, then, that's like sort of an honor and an awesomeness and an intimacy that God was even trying to bring to these people who had come to his land. Like if they would fear the Lord. Did the priest who was sent there know what he was talking about? That's a good question. Because, apparently he had a ministry, but it wasn't a ministry that got people to worship the God of heaven. It was, they just added it to what you were trying to figure out what the word was. They added it to their collection. They have, it's just another God. We'll put him just on the shelf with all our other gods. Is, And, I think Nebuchadnezzar originally thought God was just another, he was a big God, maybe bigger than all the other gods, but he didn't realize just how the God of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, just how much higher he was than the God that was in his land, and he learned that. It's kind of interesting story. I was reading it this morning, just, Daniel 4, he has a dream, and and Daniel says, I got to tell you, Nebuchadnezzar, that if you recognize who God is and you serve him in humility and you care for the needy and you do justice and walk humbly with God, then things will be okay. But if you live in pride, then you're going to be disciplined till you recognize who God really is. And so, this is really here's a heathen king, a brutal king, a murderous king in some ways, a prideful king, we see, but then he winds up, really praising the Lord at the end of chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar praises the Lord,
Yeah, he looks like he became a believer.
Yeah, really.
He was straight up pagan, tyrannical, but he was humbled. That's a story to show us how God works, that he takes a proud pagan king and humbles him, an idolater, and he knows no other.
Yeah.
But now he humbles him, and he has a great confession.
Yeah.
Great confession. It's amazing, a transformation from his heart. It looks like will we see him in heaven?
I believe so.
That's amazing.
I think like God, when we take those passages in Proverbs and other, like, he chastises those he loves, I mean, he had an idea, and then when his pride swelled up, God said, okay, here's 7 times, whatever, there's 7 months, 7 years, 7 weeks, whatever happened there, he was disciplined until it says he gave glory to the God of heaven, and then he praised him, so the chastisement idea is the one that recognizes the relationship. You tell that story about Justin and the bicycle.
Yeah.
The bicycle is not the issue. It's the idea. I would like you to have your bicycle, because you might have a paper route and you want to serve papers on your bicycle. I gave you the bicycle out of love, and I'd like you to keep the bicycle. And I'm telling you how to make sure it doesn't get stolen off the back porch.
Yeah, right,
right? And he could choose to listen to you, like God is saying, I'm telling you about this tree. If you don't eat from it, then death won't be it. If you put the bicycle in the garage every night, then the chances of the neighborhood thief taking it away from you is greatly diminished. Just believe me, because I know what happened to my bicycle, right? It's right. You said that verse before, like the wise, an obedient ear, wise reproof to an obedient ear is like a blessing, right?
Yeah. I'm smiling because we're dating ourselves. Like he might have a paper route, with the bike. Remember?
I had one, yeah.
I mean, I've seen. You remember the years when the kids with the sack slung around the shoulder?
I had the whole thing.
Throwing that, but we are totally in a different era.
No more.
That is over. There aren't even any newspapers anymore.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But to go back to the point, there was King Jeroboam the first, who wanted to hijack the Jewish religion in the north, and he did hire priests, but these were lower level guys, and I believe it's in this text too, in 2 Kings 17. So these are not Orthodox priests, Levitical priests teaching law. These are off, different message, different spirit, and everything. So, I mean, it's a very corrupt era in 2 Kings 17, and they're actually saying this is why we are being judged by God, because we're really messed up in our understanding of things. We've really departed from God. So he sends them to Babylon to be corrected, and when they come back, they never become idolatrous again, and that's in Ezra and so on. So, but to say that the era we are living in today, there are for the Christian many routes that you can go down and have a form of godliness but not have the power. Yeah. You can be obedient but not really in your heart. You can have a confession but not like what do you really believe on a Friday night.
That's true. Yeah. The other thing, went towards the end of the message last night. You can find this message, friends, if you want to, at ggwo.org. You can go to the sermons. I think that'll be posted there at some point. When you were talking about the Easter afternoon with your family, I mean, I'm interested, like when I'm looking in Jeremiah and, you're talking about the captivity and what was the instruction for the people who had been taken to Babylon. And I find that instruction very powerful that, this is what you are to do. The family, give your daughters to, in marriage, sons, marry daughters, have families, plow the fields, plant, pray for the peace of the city. But like, it seems like, like when you're saying like faith and family, you mentioned that like faith and family, when we understand that principle that God initiated to the earth in in the garden, family was the first institution there, marriage, and then the family that came from it. It's like, it just seems like this is, for lack of for all that we could take in and think of how are we going to change the world that's going chaotic? Well, you really can't look macro. You have to look micro. You have to look at your family. And like you said, there's, a family of 40 is a big family, at this stage of life, in our case, it's 15 right now, us, our kids, their wives, and our 7 grandchildren. So they're, but Jeremiah got this message from God, this is what you do. And it created consternation back in the people who were not in captivity yet. What are you talking about? Pray for the peace of the city. It's or what are you talking about? Concentrate on your family. We want victory. We want triumph. And I think the Pharisees, and the reason they couldn't really look at Jesus for who he was, because he's the Prince of Peace, and they were looking for a man of war. And they were looking for something that would make them big and bold and boisterous in the world. And Jesus has said, it's not about that. You're supposed to be a kingdom of priests. You're supposed to serve, I don't know. I'm just thinking if we listen to these things, obedience may start in the house rather than on the street.
Okay, yeah. I like what you said about Jeremiah saying, when you go to Babylon, it'll be 70 years. So,
yes.
So the false prophets said 2 years,
or
that it will not happen, that we will be coming back. If we go, we will be coming back right away. But Jeremiah is saying no. And when you go there, establish your family in Babylon, and it's what?
Yeah.
Yeah, establish your family and learn, you could say, learn the language, have your families, buy property, raise your family, and so on. And after 70 years, they will be coming back. And Cyrus was the king who ordered that to happen.
Yeah.
Right on cue.
Yeah.
But your point is that we can have concepts that maybe need to be corrected. And we might say that, in the words of Jesus, he challenged family and said, unless you hate your father and mother,
That's right.
and so on,
It's the other
so
side.
we have the other side of it, So we want to make adjustments to what is our priority, the mission, the local church, the gospel, bringing the gospel to the world. And the other side of it is, our family, So to be honest, I think all of us as Christians want to get the training and the instruction that we need for both of them.
Yeah.
We need the family to be, us talking to each other, meeting as often as it is appropriate, loving each other, caring about each other, holding each other, bearing each other's burdens, and then also being in the local church and then having a world vision.
Yeah. Now, I think, when we talk about obedience as Christians, and we know that these seemingly outrageously, and, people think, what do you mean these kind of things? Jesus is sort of putting a finger, how much do you want to live in my purpose? And we know that there's this long stretch of discussion in the upper room before he goes to the cross, John 13 through 17, but, in the midst of that, John 14, he says, you believe on me, you're going to do greater works. This is I like the fact that he's talking about what love will do in his disciples there. He said, I'm going to go away. I said, okay, but the reason I'm going away is because something greater is going to happen when I go. And I think this is, I point to this as the secret to obedience is that if you love me, here it is, keep my commandments. And he said the commandments, he talks about this in this, love one another as I have loved you. This is the great commandment. He answered this himself when he was challenged by a priest or a lawyer to say, what is the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So, it's all, do you love yourself? And the only way you can really love yourself is you love the Lord. And so this is the first obedience. And then he said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And what's the commandment? You love me. This is the first one. Everything else follows after that, I think. If you love him, then coveting won't be a problem, which is the 10th commandment. It's an all-encompassing commandment. Do you want somebody else's stuff? Again, to go back to last night's message, I think you talked about jealousies there a little bit, and some of that, like, do you covet somebody else's stuff, that kind of stuff. And, if to get away from that, just love the Lord thy God and you'll be okay. And then the very next thing, this is 15 in John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commandments. And he says, and I'm going to go to the Father, and he will give you a comforter that will abide with you forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it does not see him, neither knows him, but you know him, for he dwells with you. And here's the big thing. Once I go up, there's going to be a way for him to be in you. And so he says, love me, keep my I can't keep my commandments. Peter's going to find out very quickly overnight that he can't keep even the vow that he made to go to death with Jesus. But the Spirit's going to come, and obedience is going to be something that the Spirit moves in you, right?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, I love that. John 14:15. It's if you love me, keep my commandments. And just what you said, I just repeat it back, that if I do keep his commandments, in faith, out of a pure heart, yes, okay, Lord, I will do this, then there will be the empowerment. It is him that wills and does, right?
Yeah.
He's able to lead us that way, so that we desire to do. I mean, do you personally experience that when you do his will, that you grow to desire his will?
Yeah, I think so. And I've learned that my capacity is limited, and that there are things that I've had to do, confrontations I've had to have, apologies I've had to make, making things right when I've done things wrong. My capacity was limited, but, I had to do it. And it was the Spirit that did it to will. First, the idea that I needed to do it was from God. And I think that's the essence of Philippians 2:13. And he puts in us both the idea, the will, and then also gives us the capacity to do what pleases him, of his good pleasure. So, I'm thinking like I can't really, real obedience only happens when I allow the Spirit to move me in that way. And we can be led that way. Whatever our hand finds to do, do it with all our might. It's like a small thing, a small obedience is not, seemingly small obedience is really something that's, that speaks, speaks to God. And, he said, if you are faithful in the little things, then you'll be able to be entrusted with bigger things. And what
would you say about people that lose their motivation?
Wow. How does that happen, right? How does that happen? I guess that's a big question, because maybe we haven't lost it to the degree where we're quitting, we just quit what God has called us to do. If you lose your motivation, I think it comes from, I guess, the thing that Jesus really emphasizes is the hearing ear. Like you said, again, back to that, do you hear reproof? And I always like that word, reproof. Like, here's the proof of who God is, the proof of his power, the proof is seen in his creation, the proof of his decree is seen in the sunrise and sunset every day. And do I listen enough or pay attention enough to that to realize that he is still in control and and working things together for good? When you lose your motivation, how do you resurrect it? You could try to figure it out, and try and do like 5-step programs, 10-step programs, buy a new book or something like that, and you just get another list of principles. But really, I think, like, without the Spirit, making yourself available to the Spirit and allowing the Spirit to guide you, then, any of those kind of motivations is going to have a short shelf life. It's going to have an expiration on it because you're trying to do it in your strength. Just like those people in 2 Kings 17, they added an understanding of the God of the land, the Lord God, but they didn't enter into a full understanding of him and his presence. And so, we know that land, even when Jesus came, it's like, it's more distorted than the land, Jerusalem and the temple is distorted, but the Samaritans were even more distorted, in some ways, it seems.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody loses their motivation. For me, what I'm finding out is the people that I'm with help me a lot with my motivation, because a lot of things are not based on intellectual recognition, intellectual qualities, but they're more emotional, or you could say affection. Like motivation and affection, like, what do you desire? You don't say, do you want to ride a horse? You might say, well, you could say, why would I ride a horse? But somebody might say, would you like to ride a horse? Would you enjoy riding a horse? Do you enjoy getting up in the morning? Do you enjoy going to the church? Do you enjoy walking in faith? Do you enjoy obeying God? Like, it is a big, there's no question about it. Our feelings and our affections have a lot to do with motivation.
Yeah.
So when I lose my motivation as a believer, rediscover it by being with people that are enjoying it.
Yeah.
I enjoy walking with God. I mean, what could be more interesting than to hang out with a couple of people that say, I love God today. Praise God. Oh, I'm obeying God. God told me to do this, or I did this, and I gave some of this money away and I got this blessing, or I said a prayer and he answered me. And I mean, these are very interesting stories about obedience and faith, and then it appeals to our sense of purpose, relationship, that somebody is very much in love with God and you can follow that.
Yeah. I think, that may be the reason the writer of Hebrews said, the manner of some is to forsake the assembling of together, to forsake fellowship. And, don't do that, he said. It's like an instruction. Okay, you can choose to be a lone ranger, but you'll find yourself maybe even sinking deeper into discouragement and depression. But if you can bring yourself to the fellowship and the place of where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst. That's a real presence. Jesus is defining real presence. Where does it happen? It happens in a bond of 2 or 3 people coming together, and they open the Bible, and they're encouraged in that way. And so,
I would also
it's a simple
say,
instruction.
If you're an older person, maybe you should be around young people.
Yeah,
because young people can be very motivated and excited about what they're doing. And you can just observe, right? Mm-hmm. Like go to the church and observe and look for what God is doing in the church with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you were just saying, I think.
Well, I mean, Christianity is like, it's by its design, Jesus was saying like it will be, we know from what it will be ultimately, millions from every tribe, tongue, and nation coming together. And it was, every church should really be that, it should be a fellowship of, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multicultural, multi-economical, maybe, there should be rich and poor. All of them should be coming together in that way because it's supposed to be a representation of what's to come, and, being obedient to providing that kind of atmosphere is something that, I think pastors and church organizations are given. What are you going to be obedient to, welcoming, as James writes, are you going to be available to every kind of person, not just sitting the rich man in this great special seat, giving him parking space, all that kind of thing? Is everyone going to be welcome, and that's a big, that's a big thing that that God has called us to be, a place of refuge and that kind of thing. And, that's where I think, like you said, when you get in, when you get around people that have, more natural energy than you can get swept up in that a little bit, and it's good, right?
Yeah,
it's good,
Yeah, it is,
and we can provide wisdom,
The reason I bring it up is because I think there are elderly people in Ecclesiastes 12. It says before the evil days come, remember how the Creator in the days of your youth, while the evil days come not, yet thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. Like it might be that I lose it's another segment of a verse. It's in verse 5. When they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way. These are older people. The almond tree shall flourish, the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail. Because man goes to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. So, desire failing, but it says, like you said in Philippians 2, it's God that both wills and to do his good pleasure in us. Yeah. So, motivation, obedience to the commandments. All of this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And as we do it, we find ourselves motivated in doing good things.
Yeah, and when you bring together something, when you have a concentration of something, there is there's power and effectiveness. Whatever. Horsepower is the multiplication. Like 2 horses can do this, and then you add another horse, it gets, it's exponential kind of thing. When you have when you're obedient to the principle of fellowship, in the purpose of God, then there's, like Jesus is saying here, he said, you'll do greater works than these, because my Spirit's in you, and the concentration of what's happening in you is going to, do something, something that I don't think people really can recognize naturally. Jesus couldn't explain it. I can't really tell you how it's going to happen. I'm just saying, let me love you, and you love each other as I've loved you. And that's really the essence of obedience, right?
Yeah. And also, when people are told specifically to do something, let's say, go 1 mile, but then it's in their heart to do 1 mile and go 2 miles, and maybe even they would go 3 miles, and then maybe they would go 55 miles and not be counting it. So, like, imagine, like, the Lord is saying, go with me 1 mile, but then you end up going 55, and then you're not even thinking, like, about obedience. You just are enjoying who you are with and how it is happening and what you are doing and what it means. It'd be like giving money. I think there are people in church history that gave enormous amounts of money, and if you interviewed them, they would just say, I never did really anything.
Yeah.
Like they have gone to a realm in a relationship where there's no limits almost. And Jesus said, greater things will you do than what I have done. Because I think we are able to go to like limits like beyond.
Yeah.
In our hearts, because the heart of man is like gold when it's right.
When it's right. And I think, when you're talking about that, like with just about anything, when you're starting out, there are foundational elements, like whether you're playing a piano, a guitar, whether you're becoming a plumber and apprenticing, whether you're learning how to code, in information technology. It's like, there are basic elements and principles that have to be followed. And like you receive Jesus Christ, and then, the instruction from the psalmist is that how shall a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed to the word of God. And it's like developing these patterns of, Jesus said, I gave you these commandments, keep them, treasure them, because there is, like you said, there is like an energy, there's a multiplication, there's a power that seems to accumulate, and before you know it, you've lived for God 50 years. And it started with you coming to an altar, and receiving God. You're a college student.
And if you were told there at the altar, this is what you're going to do, you're going to, I don't believe that, and don't talk to me like that, because that's just beyond me.
Yeah.
But then I think of a family, they have 5 children, and then they adopt 3 more.
Yeah.
And somebody on the outside of that could say, why would you even want to do that?
But great capacity. God gave it to them, right?
But to them, they're like just living the life, This is what they do. This is how they think.
And it's all rooted in love. It's like, it is. Yeah. It's like love. My son has taught me that very much. Like, how would I give my kidney to my mom? And the reason he's been saying is love did it. And I'm like, okay, so stop. I'm going to weep here before you know it. But it is like, we don't really, you don't know you don't know how far beyond the limits of you'll go. But Jesus said, "Keep my commandments." It's very simple. And what's the first one? Love me. I've loved you. You love me. You'll learn how to love your neighbor as you learn how to love me, and then there'll be like a multiplication, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And there'll be a fruitfulness.
Exactly.
And it goes all the way back to the beginning. So, well, friends, that's the Grace Hour show for today. We want to thank you for being a part of our podcast. For Pastor Tom Schaller, I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis. Shout out from Jehu. He's there quiet. He has no microphone, but he is making sure our microphones are working as he does so often here. We want to encourage you to subscribe to the show on many different platforms, and we also encourage you to be a part of a local assembly somewhere, somehow. We are a local assembly. You can be a part of our local assembly. We have church services 9, 11, and 6:30 this coming Sunday. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Thursday.